Hey beautiful people, what is up and welcome back to my channel. I'm Jamila and I love all things beauty. I love all things makeup, I love all things skincare, and I especially love sharing my tips and tricks for how to find high-end and luxury beauty products at bargain prices. If that sounds like something you're interested in, I would absolutely love if you would consider subscribing and joining the fam. Okay, so this is late. I know it's late, leave me alone. It is what it is, right? So this is gonna be my mid-year favorites. Yes, we are in July, probably in August by the time this goes out. I'm doing my best. I'm trying, okay? So I almost decided to skip this video entirely, and then I was like, you know what, make it happen, make it happen. So this is gonna be my mid-year favorites specifically for my eyeshadow palettes. I'm gonna do a separate one talking about some of the other products that I tried throughout 2022, but I wanted to create something very separate for eyeshadow because I tend to ramble, and I didn't want the next video to be I didn't want the whole video to be too long if I did eyeshadow and all of these other products. So we're just gonna focus on eyeshadow for this video today. So I'm gonna run through these, probably won't have any swatches or anything else, but I just wanted to talk about this so you guys were aware that, you know, I have been really reflecting on what I've bought in 2022 so far, and I just wanted to share that with you. Okay. So in no particular order, I do have my pile of palettes ready to go. And I have some couples on the floor, and I will mention a couple of singles because I feel like I've tried a good amount of singles this year so far, so I'll talk about that as well. But anyways, let's just dive in, and I'm gonna start by trying to go almost chronologically from January till now. So I actually went back, I looked at my videos, I looked at my ranking videos to see, you know, what palettes were I trying in January, because I have not been documenting this anyway, so I did that to see, you know, what did I buy, what have I used, what have I filmed with. And the first thing that jumped out to me, and one that I had to mention, is the Sydney Grace and Temtalia palettes. Now, mind you, I picked this up, I want to say during their Black Friday sale, so I definitely didn't pick it up in 2022, but I tried it in 2022, and I did a rankings video on this in January. And this, I really enjoy the Sydney Grace formula. I don't know how else to say it. I've said it a ton of times. It's one of the most consistent formulas that I have when it comes to eyeshadow. The mattes blend, they perform well, they're super pigmented, the shimmers are stunning. For the most part, they're just like metallic shimmers. You don't get any like toppers or multi-chromes or anything like that fancy, you know, variations, but you get like real solid, highly pigmented metallic shades, and that's enough for me. Like, I'm just like, the consistency, the quality, it's enough. Like, I don't need them to branch out into the multi-chromes and all the other fancy dancy stuff, because what they create, I think, is perfection. And when it comes to their collab with Temtalia, I actually decided to pull out 2 out of the 3 palettes. Like, I was trying to get one. I really was trying to narrow it to one. I did my best. It didn't work. So, so now we are down to 2. So the first one that I picked up is the Quintessence Palette. Now, all of these are in the deep variation. That's the other thing I love about Sydney Grace, is they give you an opportunity to, like, just choose between light and deep and have, like, mattes that suit your complexion, rather than having, you know, a bunch of light mattes that don't work for you, or deep mattes that create a really, really grungy look. You can really kind of like tailor it. So like I said, the first one is the Quintessence palette. This is stunning. Like, I love blues and I love greens, and I think that this gives me that in like the most perfect form. Now, the greens in this palette definitely have a little bit of a twist to it. I feel like they have like such a beautiful shade to it. This blue purple shade here is stunning, and this Aurora shade, I would argue, is, you know, kind of like a duochrome. Like, you get a really, really nice kind of like blue purple sheen to it, and you can see just from my fingers how highly metallic and reflective these shades are. I didn't even really dip my hand into this like a ton, and you just get a ton of pigment just off the jump. And that's what I love about Sydney Grace, is I know that whenever I go and reach for this palette, I will get consistent, perfect quality. And this was just a color story that really, really appealed to me, you know, having the blues, having the purples. There's actually even like a red shade in here that I think pairs really well with the purple blue shades. So it was definitely one that stood out to me, and I'm kind of mad that I waited till 2022 to really, really play with this palette. Now, the other one from that trio that I decided to show you guys is, what is this one? On the Horizon, again in the dark formula. And this one brings the grunge. Now, I loved this one because it has a little bit more of a grungy feel to it, and you can already kind of tell from the textures. Now, looking back at this now, I probably would have gone with the light version because October Odyssey is a lighter shade in the light version, and I think that that would have been a better transition shade for me because the mattes in here are all pretty dark. So sometimes I do have to reach to get a lighter matte because it's too dark. And it's so rare saying that. Like, I never have to say, oh, I have to reach to get a lighter matte. It's always like, look at these ashy mattes. So Sydney Grace always keeps it like perfect for deeper complected girls. What I really love about this though is that you have this really beautiful kind of like copper shade here, and then this almost like teal green, it's not teal, I don't know what this color is called, but this green shade here is one of my absolute favorites. And I love an orange eyeshadow, and together these two on the lid are perfect. I think green and orange look so good together. You even do get like a really deep kind of like navy blue as well with a little bit of purple in there. And like you guys can see how these shades just look barely swatched on my finger. Like, orange eyeshadow will be like forever my like weakness. And greens, orange, greens, blues, those are like my weaknesses. Like, look at this green, it's so unique, and these two together, just amazing. So I had to pull out these two palettes from Sydney Grace. The third one is really beautiful, but I think it's definitely more purpley pinky, and I feel like I can dupe out those shades in other palettes, which is why I didn't feel called to include that one in my favorites. But quite frankly, if you buy all three, I think you get a discount. So that's how I ended up with all three, and I don't regret having that third one either. I think it's all just really, really beautiful. Now, next up in my mid-year favorites is the Gemini palette from Nomad Cosmetics. This is the original Gemini palette. I mean, it's different packaging from when they first released it, but they did release this with the Gemini 2, and I decided to pick Gemini 1 over Gemini 2 because I really do like this color story a lot more than Gemini 2. So this is the Gemini 2 palette. Absolutely stunning, and this, in my opinion, is like one of Melt's best palettes. Now, you guys already know I love a good green, I love a good mustard. So together, these two, all of these shades work really well. You know, all of these mattes work and blend really well on me. I have zero issues with the mattes. Quite frankly, the mattes are the standout of this palette. There are only two shimmers, but I would be perfectly happy creating just an all matte look using this palette. And I think that this just is stunning. You do get this, you know, it's almost like a copper shimmer. It's like a gold copper shimmer. And you guys already know, as I mentioned, I love kind of like those orangey, coppery shimmers, not just standard golds. And I love that this does have that lighter shimmer because the Melt Gemini 2 palette actually, it's, you know, similar to this in terms of like packaging and layout, and it also only has two shimmers, and both of these shimmers in that one are pretty dark and grungy. So I like this one more because you do get that lighter shimmer in there, and I just think that this color story appeals to me a little bit more versus those sort of red plummy shades that are in the Gemini 2. The next palette that I want to talk about is one that was in my last rankings video that I raved about, and that is the Odin's Eye Solman 2. Now, this is a pretty recent release, but it's definitely a palette that I've been reaching for a ton. I think the colors in here just work well. I think that they're perfect for summer. I think that you get, you know, light to dark in a way that makes sense and in a way that works for my complexion. I'm obviously not the deepest person out there, so if, you know, others have issues with some of these shades and you are a deeper complexion, please let me know in the comments below. But I've actually found that I've been able to use like this really light blue and this really light purple here as like transition shades and blend out shades with these sort of deeper mattes. Now the shimmer shades in here work well. I have no issues with the shimmer shades. They do give you that standard like metallic shimmer formula though, so you don't get anything really special when it comes to the shimmer shades. The only shade that is a little bit different is this one here, Starry Sky. That's a little bit more of a topper shade, but these two are like the really just standard shimmers that you get in this palette. So you will see Starry Skies does have some base to it, but compared to the other two shimmers here, that there's just definitely more pigment with these two. And this is a really nice one if you want to just plop one or two mattes and then put that in the center as like a halo eye, just like a nice light airy halo eye with a little bit of sparkles in there. And the sparkles in this one are definitely more prominent than the ones in the standard metallics. Now, I don't think I can talk about Solman 2 without talking about its perfect companion. I've said this before, I love using House of L with Solman 2. I really wish I could just like swap these and create my own perfect palette. And the House of L is the release by Adept Cosmetics. It was inspired by Superman. You know, all of these shades are named from the L family. So you have Kal-El, Zor-El, Jor-El, all of that. And the shimmers in here really are the star of the show. Like, you basically get all multi-chromes and all duochromes. And they're that wet texture. Like, they are, like, you can kind of see the indentations from these shades in here. And when you actually apply them to the eyes, they look extremely wet. Now, I'm going to swatch Zor-El for you, which is my favorite shade. Like, look at that. And then you do get some lighter shades. This is the blue Jor-El, which is actually really nice. Let's do Allura Zor-El. Look at that vibrancy. So this is the Zor-El, and you can see that it's just a little bit more wet than a standard shimmer. Like, the pigmentation and the intensity of these shades are amazing. Now, I will say that these shades definitely have more texture to them. So if you do have, you know, textured lids, or you're worried about emphasizing texture, you know, these have emphasized texture in my lids that I didn't even know that I had. But when you really look at these shades and you see the beautiful flip in these shadows, they're absolutely stunning. And because the shimmer shades in the Solman 2 are just standard shimmers, I like reaching for the the House of L palette, because I think that it just adds a little bit more pop and a little bit more dimension to these shades. So, you know, I went back and forth on, do I include both of these, because I kind of like pieces of each one. Like, I love the mattes in this, I love the shimmers in this. But when I thought about how often I've used this palette, how much I've reached for it, the fact that I've traveled with it, I'm like, okay, you like this, girl. Just put it in there. You actually do like both of these palettes. And I've actually used House of L. Like, I just taken one shimmer and just plopped it onto the lid without any mattes. So because I like really keep reaching for these, they had to be in here because, you know, I keep reaching for them, so that must mean something, right? Okay, we have 3 palettes left, and then I want to talk a little bit about some single shadows that I have. So the next one that I want to mention is this Chanel quad. This is the Les Four Ombres quad. This was a limited edition, like, spring release. I don't think it's sold out, and probably for good reason though. This little baby retails for $65. It comes in the standard, like, you know, Chanel luxury packaging. All of those luxury brands give you that little sleeve that nobody really needs, if we're being honest. And it's just such a waste. Like, I get it, it's an experience, but I also could do without it. What am I, because anyways, I'm rambling. So this is the quad. You get the shade names on the back, and these are the 4 shades. Now, you also do get these 2 little brushes that you can use to apply your shadows. I don't know who's still using brushes like these to apply your shadows. And I hope you can see this without, like, it being super blown up, but it does look extremely basic. They're basically just 4 neutral shades. However, the quality of this is amazing. This is what I go to when I want that no makeup look. Like, I can just take one shade, plop it all over the lid, and it just gives like a little bit of a glow to the eyelid that just looks really nice and sophisticated and effortless, and like I didn't try. Whenever I'm in a rush and I just want like a wash of color on the lids, because these don't have a lot of base to them, or really any base to them, I will just like brush one of these shades over the lid. I have used multiple of them together, and I have liked that as well. But it's like such a simple, easy go-to palette, and I think the quality is really nice. Is it worth the $65? No. No, I can say that with my whole chest. I don't think it's worth the $65. Do I enjoy it? Yes. Would I have repurchased this? Would I repurchase this? No. It's definitely not worth the $65. And y'all know Chanel don't go on sale, so I wouldn't say pick this up. But I am glad that I have it, and the fact that I use it makes me even like, it makes it sit better with me. Like, if I had this and I wasn't using it, I'd be mad as hell. But I have been using it, so there's that. And I've been using it pretty consistently. Like, once a month I will like reach for this because I'm like, oh, I have to go do something real quick, I don't have time. Put a little bit of that on the lid and it's good to go. I took this to like a basketball game with me once, taking it to like barbecues, especially when you don't want to do too much, and it's like, now that it's summertime, place hot, and you don't really want to have too much makeup on the face. That is what I've been using that for primarily. Okay, the next palette that I want to talk about is actually from a new brand. This is the only palette the brand has released so far, and this is the Fantasy Cosmetics Druid palette. Now, this is a very, very grunge eyeshadow palette. I picked this up, March? I think it was in March. And honestly, it felt kind of out of place because this does in my opinion, feel more like a fall palette. Granted, you could wear whatever color story you want whenever you wanted to wear it, but it felt more fall to me. And even though it felt more fall, when I actually got it and I tried it, I was really impressed with this. Like I said, this is the first release from the brand. It's the only palette that they've put out so far, and I really like it. Now, there are some issues with it. For example, these two shades are pretty much identical on the eye. Like, there needed to have been a deeper matte, oh sorry, a lighter brown. Yes, there are some tonal differences in the brown, but on the eyes, you can't tell the difference. And I actually did a look where I used both of the browns, and they looked no different. So there's that. And then there's the shade Regrowth, which seems to be pressed really hard in the pan, so it's a little bit difficult to actually pick it up on the finger and apply. So I think that was, you know, those were the two main things about the palette. However, the shimmers in this look so good. They blend, I mean, they apply really well. Like, you can see this is the one that has like really tightly packed. Like, it's hard to get it out. But the rest of it, it's beautiful. Like, if you are somebody that likes grungy looks, if you are somebody that wants that grunge, this is a really nice palette to check out. And it does make me very excited to see what else the brand has to put out, because I really did enjoy this palette, you know, even with those little inconsistencies or those things that I didn't love. I still reached for this quite a ton, and I still loved all of the looks that I came out with. And I don't think it was too grunge where it was like, oh girl, what is you doing? I actually thought that they were really, really pretty looks. So I enjoy this. Now, granted, the other thing too is the packaging is hella dark, so the imagery on the packaging is not super visible. Even the text on the packaging is a little hard, but those are little things. I could get over that. I could care less, to be quite frank. But the performance and the looks that I was able to get out of it, that is what, you know, made me put this in as my mid-year favorites. So hopefully the brand comes up with something that's a little bit more light, a little bit more airy for folks that don't want too much grunge. And then the final palette that I want to talk to you guys about is from one of my favorite indie brands, and that is Nomad Cosmetics. This is the Nomad Whistler Snow Lodge palette. Now, if you watched my last Nomad video, you'll see I wasn't in love with Fêtes de Provence, but this is the business. I had to tell myself, Jamila, put on People Them palette, try something else. I was in love with this palette. I used this so many times. I was like, I kept reaching for this palette, and so this had to be in this list. Now, what I love about this palette is the absolute versatility of it. Now, you can get a red look, you can get a blue look, you can get green, or you can keep it kind of neutral because you do have these gold and champagne shades here. Or you can mix and match as you want to. This shade Ski Bomb here is a I think it's more of a duochrome than a multi-chrome. So it's it looks really nice in blue, but it does have that pinky purple shift when you put it on. Black Comb is a really, really nice rich blue shade, and the mattes here work really well. I've never had an issue with Adept mattes, and even though these are two lighter shimmers, they did not look ashy on me. That's one thing that, you know, I was a little afraid of, is are these lighter shades gonna look ashy on me? Not at all. They looked so good, and I felt like I could just use this palette, move things around, mix and match, and come up with some of the most beautiful looks. Now, one of the things that I found was very strange, this matte blue shade, whenever I put it, you see how it looks blue on my finger? Whenever I applied it onto the eyes and I blended it out, it really shifted and became a teal shade. Now, I didn't mind that, but you know, sometimes I wanted it to be blue, so I had to figure out how to pack it on to get it to stay this blue shade. But once it blended out, it turned into something completely different. I'm trying to see if I can demonstrate. It's not showing up, but that was a surprise when I was applying that to the lid. However, overall, you know, when I used this palette, I felt like I created such beautiful looks. I felt like every single shade worked for me. I felt like it blended really well, and I had no issues with it. And I've said this before, but one of the things I appreciate about Adept is that they give us these really thought out palettes that, you know, they do a lot of research on the place that they're talking about, and they create these formulas that are just really nice and effortless and easy to blend and work with. And they're not super over the top or shiny. A lot of times indie brands can give you that high impact multi-chrome, duochrome, metallic, wet looking shades. And sometimes you just don't want that. So to have an indie brand that is doing, you know, really nice, unique color stories, but that are toned down, that is what I appreciate the Nomad brand for doing. So really love this palette. I had so much fun with this until I, you know, had to force myself to use something else. So it had to be on today's list. Sorry, I have one last palette to tell you guys, and then actually 2 more palettes. Jeez and ages, I gotta speed this up. So the next palette that I want to talk to you guys about is the Blend Bunny Surge palette. Now I had bought Blend Bunnies, and it took me a while to actually use it. And then I did a palette bingo with Dr. Ash and her makeup. I'll link that below. And I used this palette, and I was like, wait, hold up. Y'all didn't tell me blends blend like that. So I fell in love with this palette. I think that Blend Bunny has one of the best matte formulas there is. Are the shimmers the best? Honestly, no. Like, they are definitely not going to be my go-to shimmers, but these mattes blended so well. Like, and what I love about this palette is that you get so many different formulas. Like, you have pastels on the top. You have these kind of like mid-tone shades that do lean a little bit on the grungy side. Then you have your deep shades that allow you to deepen up any of these shades. And then at the bottom, they gave us neons. Like, so you get neons, pastels, deep and grungy, and kind of mid-tone. And then you get a row of shimmers. So you have all of these shades in so many different colors. And with Blend Bunny Cosmetics, it really does, as their name say, these shadows blend. So you can blend multiple shades together to get the shade that you want, and you don't have to blend for forever, because nobody wants to sit here and blend till thy kingdom come. But it blends really well, and you come up with some of the most beautiful looks. So I had to, you know, include the Surge palette because I use that like a ton. I reach for that so much, and sometimes I would even reach for that and then reach for like singles from other brands to plop into it. Now, I think this is the last palette that I want to mention, and this is the, so it's in a actual palette because I had to buy the singles because the palette itself got sold out. I know you can't buy from this brand at all, but I wanted to show you guys the Black Glove palette, which is this from Tammy Tanuka. Now, it does come in a palette form. Like I said, it was sold out, and now because of the Ukraine-Russia war, you can't buy from the brand at all. But this was one of my favorite releases of 2022, and it was one of my favorites specifically because of this shade here. Now this, I am trying to find the perfect dupe for this because obviously I can't buy it from Tammy Tanuka anymore, and it is perfection. Like, it's red and gold and black and green. Like, I died when I put this on my lids. Like, it is literally perfection, and I have been obsessed with this. I'm so sad that it came in these like really small pans, because one of the things that Tammy did offer was that, you know, you could choose between like a regular size shadow or a small shadow, and I would have loved this in like a full size. But anyways, that Black Glove palette, it really gave me so many tingles. It was like my first time trying the Tammy Tanuka brand, and I realized like, okay, the hype is real. Like, this does perform really amazing. I got the same type of excitement that I did when I first tried Pat McGrath or Natasha Denona. So I love this. I'm trying not to overuse it because Lord alone knows if we'll ever be able to buy from the brand again. And the quality in this, the mattes blend themselves in like seconds, like so quickly and easy. And the shimmers are just perfection on the eye. It was, I can't even really explain it. I do have a video on it with 2 looks. I will link that. Please go watch it because you see like all of my like joy in those videos. Okay, now let's talk about some single shades. So I'm not going to mention anything from Terra Moons because I've really only tried one so far. Really blown away. I enjoyed doing these swatches, but I'm looking forward to playing in them more. I do want to talk about this Black Moxie bundle. Now, this is a Black-owned indie brand. They did send me these shades. I purchased these on this side. And this has to have been, you know, some of my favorite multi-chromes to work with. They definitely have that more wet texture like, you know, standard multi-chromes do. And they just work so well. I've had no issues with these, and what I have been doing is that I have been using my Blend Bunny Blends palette and just applying these all over the lid. Like, I love the multi-chromes like this because they make it look like you've done more work than you actually did. So you put some matte zone and then you just put one of these shades on the lid, not multiple, just one, and then that's it, you have a look. And I did that so many times, and so many times when I didn't have enough time to create real looks, that's what I did, and I was so happy with it. And you can see how these shades have a very strong shift. They're definitely like more wet than anything else, but not too wet, and they're very smooth. So I have really been enjoying these shades, and I still do continue to reach for them when I want something that's a little bit more va-va-voom, that looks like I put in more work than I did, but I don't have the time to be doing too much. I will reach for like these multi-chromes. And lastly, Actually, no, not lastly. Also, speaking of multi-chromes, I did finally get into Give Me Glow. This is definitely a favorite, this giant palette. I have another one of it. But what I want to show you guys is two multi-chromes from the Give Me Glow brand. So it's this big green one here and then this one. So this green one is Dragon's Blood. I'm so glad that I have this in this giant shade. Like, look at that. Like, you can see the green, the blue. And then this blue one, I don't know what the name of it's called, but it's definitely more textured. But these were two bundles that I picked up from the brand, and I fell in love. Like, look at the dimension. Look at that. I'm gonna swatch it here. So this is the green Dragon's Blood shade. Do you see that? Do you see that? And then this one, I gotta figure out what the name is. I'll put it down there. Listen. Everything. Like, and this has like the most beautiful blue green flip. Oh, I need to put this on my eyes like immediately. I have been obsessed with both of these multi-chromes, and it has definitely made me want to check out the Give Me Glow brand more. Now, they do have matte shadows as well. Not my favorite matte formula. So I wouldn't recommend the mattes, but their shimmers, they be shimming. So if you want some good shimmers and some multi-chromes, I would say check out Give Me Glow. The one thing that I do want to flag is that their pan sizes are giant, like ginormous. So just take that into consideration, because I don't think anybody needs an eyeshadow palette that's the size of those pans. Nobody. Unless you do. If you do, let me know. But I don't think, most people don't need a palette that's that size. So just something to consider. I am really glad that I have the green in that size though, because I will use this baby. I will use this baby till thy kingdom come. Let me figure out what this one is called. Oh, and this one is the Xenon shade. So you can see that it has a lot more texture in there than the green. And last but not least, I do have to mention my single shadow. This is a new one that I'm giving to one of my sisters. It is called Trinbago. I created this with Pretties for Your Face. I'm absolutely in love with it. It has to be one of my favorite reds ever. It was inspired by my country, Trinidad and Tobago. So you guys know it had to be in here. Like, couldn't end without it. But that's it, guys. Those are all of my 2022 eyeshadow favorites so far. We're in the middle of the year. I will probably have some more towards the end. I'm trying to really not purchase a ton more, but I do have a lot in my basket of shame that I still need to try. So I will be working through those palettes, trying not to buy any more, doing the best that I can. If you like this video, please like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Leave a comment down below letting me know what your favorite eyeshadow palette or single of 2022 is so far. And as always, I love you guys. Thank you so very much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next one. Bye!